Hi everybody, welcome to Sprague Woodturning. My name's Jim. If you haven't been here before, this is predominantly a turning channel. Each and every week I show people how to make things on the lathe. This week we're going to be working with some gnarly looking lilac. This comes to us from Warren. Thanks again, Warren, for sending this along. And it's been, I've got the letter over there, but apparently it's been holding a gate open for 10 years or so. So anyway, it's been through my fridge kiln. It's dry and ready to cast. He sent some other stuff along. So, you know, let's go over to the workbench. We'll have a look at that and see maybe what my plan's going to be for this. Because, well, I don't really know what I'm going to do with this as it stands right now. So yeah, this has got some pretty cool texture on it. Piece broken off there, big cut down through here. This is not the root system, so shouldn't be any dirt up in here, but if it's been sitting around Alberta, rural Alberta for 10 years, it's probably got some sand in it, that's for sure. So we're going to do our best to blow this all out and clean it up. So he sent this in this box, and whole bunch of pine cone and spruce cones. So pine cones have probably got some pitch in it, and I haven't cooked it out of them yet. So just might take a whole bunch of these spruce cones and throw them in any dead parts of the casting. And I don't know, just to try and take up some room and give some more visual interest to it. Now he said enclosed in the box is the lilac root we discussed. It's not dried, lived outside as a gate stop for 10 years or more. Might get some purple tints from it. And add spruce and pine cones packing material. It's actually a pretty neat idea. Anyway, thanks again, Warren, and Warren's in Alberta. So first thing we're gonna have to do here is there's a lot of loose material here that we gotta try and get rid of, or else we are going to have a ton of floaties in the epoxy. So I'm not even really sure what's the best way to go about that, but maybe we'll try the flap sander on the lathe, maybe. Anyway, I'll figure it out. So trying to get down into these areas to clean them out, especially when they're kind of deep like this, is kind of challenging. I did make a separate flap sander from old belts out of my belt sander, and I will show that here at some point. But this here did the job, but you know, just knocking on the floor. Look at this material coming out of it. I will say that this was very abrasive on my tools, and yeah, it's because it was full of sand as well. But you know, you can't, it's awful hard to replicate Mother Nature. I mean, this thing it's gnarly looking. I like the texture on it, and the fact that it's got all of these pieces coming up out of it is going to should give some really neat figure inside of this piece. So in order to round this, of course, I need to flatten the bottom of it so it will sit flat on the bed and not be kind of dangerously wobbling around, because you definitely don't want to do that when you're cutting stuff like this on the bandsaw. It's really can be dangerous. This is the blade that I used to cut the soapstone with, or the alabaster. So yeah, I'm gonna have to change that out. This isn't the wood turner's blade. It's actually a bimetal blade, and it doesn't cut as well as the wood turner blades do. Give me a minute. So I will definitely hold on to that blade, because you know, after people watch that video, they definitely want me to do more stone work. So I will hold on to that blade and use it when I need to cut stone. And I'll talk a little bit more about last week's project coming up here. So yeah, I think I'm just going to take these spruce cones and put them down in the areas where we're missing wood. And then we'll see how much of that is incorporated in the final design. Again, as of right now, I don't know what I'm doing with this, but first step is to get it cast, and then we'll go from there. I think I've only used spruce cones in one other casting that I can think of right now anyway, but they certainly give a neat texture, and I will be using more of them in the future. But I do think the pine cones are my favorite. But this is a very close second, I think. Now I want to lock these together I would prefer not to put a weight on this. So what I'm going to do is just kind of dribble some of this Flash Bond by Designer Epoxy, CA glue all over top of these cones, and hopefully that will lock them together into the piece, and then we won't see this in the final piece after it's made. There, I'm not going to hit that with any accelerator. I'm just going to let that cure as it is, and then hopefully these won't float, but we'll see. Let's do some epoxy, or let's mix up some epoxy. This week we're going to be using deep casting epoxy from Designer Epoxy. There is a lot of epoxy in this piece, more than I'd really anticipated on using. But you know, the cones took up a lot of that space, but you know, it doesn't really do a lot of filling per se. Now we're going to use some black pearl. Black is classic. Black goes with any decor. And while I'm not Cameron Black from Blacktail Studios, I certainly do believe in his philosophy that, you know, by using black, that will allow the wood to pop. And black being a neutral color, it's a great color to use if you're putting items up for sale. Best to stay away from the loud colors because that really could affect your sales on items. This is the first 1.5 liters of, I'm going to say this is going to take at least 3, but let's find out. See if our cones are going to float too, that's the other thing. Yeah, I'll mix another one up and I'll be right back. Here we go with another 1.5 liters. Well, we're getting there. This is going to absorb probably a lot of epoxy, so I'm going to mix up another one because I think we're going to need it before we're done after the vacuum chamber, that's for sure. So along with the black pearl, I'm also going to mix up some crystallized white. I'll put 2 spoonfuls of it in 350 milliliters or 12 ounces. So this is 1.25 liters or 40 ounces. All right, vacuum chamber coming up next. I'll put this in after the vacuum chamber. That way it doesn't all settle out and go to the bottom of the casting. Here we go. More satisfying vacuum chamber footage for you. I know a lot of people really like watching this, and I'm one of them as well. And this thing is, well, let's just say that it's got a lot of dry rot in it. It's really punky, and it is completely full of cracks. So I do see this as a necessary step. You could throw this in the pressure pot and hope for the best. It may work out perfectly fine. But you know, I think using the vacuum chamber is a smart thing to do here. And of course, if you have a pressure pot, you'd be crazy not to put it in the pressure pot after this as well. That's full vacuum. See you in an hour. All right, that's been well, a little over an hour. As you can see, there's hardly any bubbles now. So I'm going to release the vacuum and we'll add the crystal ice white. But anyway, this will go into the pressure pot. See you guys in there in 72 hours. Well, this is what we're looking at. Yeah, the epoxy level has dropped off. I'd say probably a good solid inch or so, which is, you know, we want to see that. This is still a very deep casting. I don't know if we're going to do anything with this today, but I definitely want to get it out and have a look at it and make sure that everything is all good so that, well, if we got some thermal cracking, then maybe we can fix it today. It's Friday. My live stream starts here in about an hour, so I don't have a lot of time. When they're new buckets, they come out so easy. Ha, that's interesting. If you remember, I just took that crystal ice white and put it on the very top of this. and it somehow filtered all the way down to the bottom still. Looks like we got a good solid blank. No thermal cracking. Yeah, no, looks really good. How tall is this? That, ladies and gentlemen, is 7 inches. And yeah, you know, it takes a while for deep cast to cure. I mean, it's just a matter of planning. Obviously, I always start at least 3 days ahead of where I need to where I need to have it on the lathe. But I have 2 pressure pots, so you know, I'm kind of always working on 1 or 2, maybe even 3 projects at one time. But it does take a little bit of planning. But you know, 7 inches and no thermal cracking. So I mean, that kind of shows you how designer epoxy, how well it works. The deep cast anyway. Still looks to be a little soft, so definitely going to leave it another day. But we will get this on the lathe tomorrow. We'll see you then. So it is, in fact, the next day. I just drilled a couple of holes here for the live center and the drive center. So we'll get this mounted up and see how it's running and see if we have to make any changes. Yeah, that bucket's got a little bit of a warp to it, so I don't think it's going to get any better than that. Starting off with the number 3 Hercules from Hunter Tool Systems here to whittle this down. This blank was really out of balance. It had that big, heavy epoxy side to it, so that was really messing with the speed. I now have my lathe bolted to the floor, and after I was done with this casting, this reaffirmed that I was going to have to do that because I just wasn't able to really pick up the speed to you know, get this done in an efficient amount of time that I really wanted to. And keep in mind that, you know, the higher the speeds when you're working with epoxy, typically the better the cut you're going to get. So that's another reason to get the lathe bolted down, and it's just safer as well. So I did go out and buy 4 1/2-inch anchor bolts to bolt the lathe down, and 3 of the 4 went quite smoothly, and had some trouble on the 4th one. Was able to correct it, but it's one of these things that when you're using anchor bolts in concrete, they're pretty unforgiving, because once you drive them in, well, good luck getting them out, even if they're not tightened. So I believe that maybe a stone fell down inside of the hole after drilling it out, and it caused me some issues. So anyway, I did shoot a small little video on that. I'm not sure if I'll embed that in a video or if I'll put it up by its own, but maybe I'll even just do a short with it. But anyway, it's now secured to the floor, and I have yet to use it since securing it to the floor, but I know for sure that it is going to perform better than what I had before. So getting back to the piece on the lathe, yeah, I'm just cutting in a tenon here. We're going to grab the tenon side here will be the top, and then of course I'm going to put a glue-on tenon on the bottom of this. And you know, again, people keep asking me why I do this, and it's just so that I don't rob size away from, or height away from, whatever I'm working on. If you're using integral tenons, then you're going to be robbing height off of every piece that you make. Now the piece that's in the chuck right now, it's going to be the collar on the top of this form. So I don't really lose anything there, and it needed to be cleaned up anyway. But big fan of glued on tenons, but you know, you just need to support your work properly so that you give those tenons a chance to not get pulled off the bottom of your piece. And as far as the glued on tenons are concerned, I know that some people have said they've been having some failures. I think the key to success is making sure that the bottom is sanded with 60 grit, roughed up really nicely and flat, and that volume is a major issue. Of course, I have an electric frying pan. I dip it in that and stick it on there, so I have lots of volume. I don't know if you can really truly use a glue gun if it's going to give you enough volume without curing before you actually put the glue block on. So that's why I prefer to use the hot melt glue in an electric frying pan. Yes, lots of wastage with the glue, but you know, it's pretty rare that I actually have one of these joints fail. If it fails, it's usually because the tenon wasn't shaped correctly for the dovetail jaws that I like to use now. And, you know, if the piece isn't cleaned properly, I think that that's another reason why these tenons fail. But it is really important. I would think that probably the biggest thing is to get lots of volume on there and that it is really still in its liquidy form when you use, you know, the clamping pressure to put together. And I should also mention that that was a white birch glued on tenon that I'm using there, a side grain tenon. White birch is a really good material for these tenons because it's a soft hardwood that you can really bite down on it, but it will still kind of hold its structure and not, you know, fall apart like, say, softwood tenons. Stay away from softwood. Do not use that for your waste blocks. Well, it's decision time. What do you think? These yellow parts in here with the black really look cool. I'm going to get some denatured alcohol here. Wipe this down and see what may be waiting for us inside. Yes, indeed. Yeah, you can see lots of the crystallized white in there. Pine cones are always cool, or cones of some sort. These ones are spruce. Yeah. The only issue is that this is a big resin pocket from here to here, and it is really throwing things out of balance. So right now I can only do about, well, probably close to 300 RPM. That's it, max. As this thins out and gets lighter, hopefully we'll be able to pick up the speed. But this is one of the issues when you have a piece that's got a heavy resin pocket on one side and a lighter wood on the other. As far as what I'm going to do with this, boys, I tell you, I'm still kind of struggling a little bit. Maybe like a honey pot jar type thing, something like that. Would make a beautiful hull form too, so I don't know, I'm kind of leaning more towards that. I do kind of see some striations in this, like this. And I don't know what that is. This is one of the interesting things about working with epoxy, is you're kind of throwing a few curveballs every now and then, and you gotta swing and hopefully you hit the ball. Hopefully it looks good when they're done. But anyway, I gotta give this a little bit more thought, and then well, I'm sure I'll talk to you in the voiceover here. It's a neat looking piece though. So when I'm struggling with a piece like this, the one thing that I'll do is I'll cut in a foot area, and a lot of times it's not going to really matter. Most designs you're going to need a cut in area where the foot is. So a lot of times I find when I do that foot area, it will come to me. It will tell me what it wants to be. I don't want that to sound too hippie, but that's just kind of the way it is. A lot of times I'll Google hollow forms, and I'll look at some designs and make some alterations to some designs that I see. But you know, a lot of times it's cutting around defects. This doesn't look right in this orientation, so we're going to do this, and then you end up with a form. lots of shavings being directed into your living room. A lot of times that's all I see. That's hitting my shield, and a lot of times I got to turn my shield to one side and look out kind of the side of it. If I've got a good cut going, then I don't want to stop that. Anybody that's a turner will know exactly what I'm talking about. So as you watch me whittle this down, I'll briefly talk about last week's project. And of course, that was the raspberry red alabaster bowl that I did. Thanks to those who watched that. I think that it was, a really cool thing. It's always great to do new things on the lathe, and that was certainly one of them. Now, there were some people commenting on, was it worthwhile doing? And a small bowl like this, like the one that I made last week, yeah, you're still there's still some profit there for sure after your expenses. But I did burn up a bandsaw blade. I did use up one cutter on the Hercules. The cost of the stone to not only buy the stone but ship it. So these are all factors for sure that will definitely eat into your profits and wonder if it's worthwhile doing. Not to mention, if you're damaging the bearings on your bandsaw or on your lathe, there's all kinds of things that could really cut into your profit margin. But I think there was definitely a cool thing, and we were definitely going to do more of it in the future. I would like to maybe get larger stones. The larger the stone, then typically that should be a larger profit margin as well. So that's another consideration. Lots of people were saying, well, you should have been using water to cut the stone with, and these are woodworking tools, not stone working tools. If I was doing this as a business in the stone industry, then of course I would have bandsaws that have water and like whatever. I realize that you need water to cut stone, but it's just not feasible for someone that's just going to do it on occasion to own those tools. And if I did try that on my own woodworking equipment, it's just going to destroy them. So that's not really a feasible thing. And let's just take a moment and look at this. And I think that this is a great decision with this form. Really like the look of this. So there was a lot of people. Well, not a lot of people. A few people just say, "Was this really worth it?" And I think that it is. But we will make some more stuff in the future, and I will throw price tags on it, and I will tell you exactly what I want out of that piece that I make, and then we can go from there. But yeah, it's not a cheap thing. The stone alone, if I had to guess, to buy that same stone now was probably close to $100 by the time it's shipped to you. And so that can really eat into your profits as well. Anyway, that will be in the future. So I'm going to drill this piece out with 1.25 inches and then step it up to 2-inch. I should have tried the Forstner bit from last week to see how well it was going to cut. You can sharpen Forstner bits, so I'm not really that concerned about that. And I do eat up a fair bit of bandsaw blades just cutting wood and epoxy pieces too. So let's not keep that keep that in the back of your mind. And I will also keep that other blade, the bimetal blade, for future stone cutting, as long as it keeps working. We're all set up and ready for hollowing. This is the captive system from oneway.ca. I've got my modified laser set up. I will not be using that for a while. We're going to open up some space inside of here so we don't have to shut the lathe off every 10 seconds. We're also going to be using the retrofit tool from Hunter Tool Systems. Link in the description below. And I wouldn't think about doing this without the steady rest. And of course I've got my shop vac ready to go here. So yeah, this has been really chewing up these cutters. I changed the cutter on the Hercules yesterday, and so it used one fresh cutter. So there must be a ton of sand and dirt embedded in this. But anyway, we'll open this up. We'll stick with the straight boring bar for now, and then we'll switch out to the double bent and the bent bar as we move this way. So the irony in this was, so I was using the existing cutter on the Hercules from the stone turning that I never even rotated. That's just, I'll throw that out there, during last week's turning. So I started on this one. I noticed it was starting to not cut the way I wanted to. So I rotated it, and in no time it was ready to be changed. So that can show you just how abrasive wood can be, especially if it's a piece of wood that's been propping a fence open for 10 years. There could be all kinds of stuff embedded in this, and there certainly was. So, you know, wood can be abrasive too, even more than stone. Take a little break from this and have a look at the deer that are in the front lawn. Well, I wouldn't call it a lawn, the front field. I don't know how well this GoPro is going to pick them up or not. But the one that's on the right here, that's a buck. And that one looks like a doe behind it. No, actually, you know what? They're two bucks, actually. Huh. Wish I could zoom in with this GoPro, but I can't. There's been a doe hanging around, but these are the first two bucks that I've seen. They seem to be a little bit more alert than the doe was. Kind of funny. So I'm sure around October, those two bucks, they'll be pretty scarce. They'll be hiding, so they won't be around. We won't be even in the house by then. Speaking of that, I'll give you an update on the house and what has happened with that. And, well, nothing. They came and dug the hole. Today is Thursday, and apparently the forms are being poured tomorrow. So hopefully that's the case and there isn't more delays. I kind of thought that was going to happen the first of the week, but nobody showed up. So anyway, it's another week of delays. You know, what can you say? So at this stage, I've done all I can do with the straight boring bar. This is the double bent bar. And then you'll see me switch to the bent bar. And I really like to stick to this one. The reason for that is because there seems to be less vibration with it. There's not as much overhang. I should mention that's the Cub straight tool that I'm using there. Just wanted to clean up the opening a little bit. And, you know, obviously I've cut out a lot of footage here. And this is the bent bar. And the bent bar in conjunction with, I should mention that this is the 3/16 cutter that I'm using here, the retrofit tool. But they do also sell the 1/4 inch, and the 1/4 inch will give you a longer reach as well. But usually the 3/16 one will work perfectly fine. And, but yeah, again, those are all on the Hunter Tools website. If you're looking to upgrade your coring rig, or your hollowing rig, I should say, check them out. Retrofit Tools, they're awesome. So we're going to use the endoscope again from Craig. Thanks again for sending that. That's what we're looking at on the inside. A ridge there of some sort. Here's the very bottom. Here's where our combs are. That's a real cool look. Here's my hand on the outside. Maybe a little too thin for my liking. You know, overall it doesn't look too bad. I'll just hold this in place and try rotating it, see what kind of look we get. Pretty cool. All right, let's get the Drink Boss scraper on and we'll see if we can improve the surface in here. So I've switched back to the straight boring bar, and I'll be able to do the one, probably 1/3 to a half of the bottom part of this form. And again, if I could do this whole thing with this big heavy duty boring bar, then that's what I would really prefer to do. Just take a few passes on it, checking my progress, making sure the height is, is a big one. I mean, you want that thing cutting just, ever so slightly just below the center. And a lot of times that's what I'm doing. I'm taking a pass and I'm sticking the light in there to see kind of what's being left behind, and then I'll adjust from there. I plan on making thickness gauges that will fit between the tool rest post and the top of the banjo, and then that way when I'm using the thin bars, I'll put that thickness gauge in there, drop the tool rest down, and then I know that it's set at the perfect height. And then the same thing for the large boring bar. But it's just on my long list of things to do. All right, let's see how we did after the scraper. It's the very center bottom. Looks pretty nice. And to the right. Looks pretty decent. I'm pretty happy with that. A little bit better rate there, but maybe I'll get that with some sanding when I reach in the opening. I did see a thermal crack. See if I can find it here. Here's the cones again. It looks gold, but it's not. It's actually black. You can see it here. Where did that go to? Camera's actually kind of far away from me, or I should say my phone. There it is, right there. Right out there, you see it? That's the only one that I can see in here. There's one right here on the outside of the form. Anyway, I'm pretty happy with the way that's cut. Let's do a little bit of sanding, and then we'll be able to trim the outside. And of course, the way that we're going to do that sanding is with these 3.5-inch dipple discs from sandpaper.ca. And this short little arbor. I do have a longer arbor, but I find that it's just really not necessary anymore. These shorter ones typically will get the job done. Anything deeper than this, I do find that the boring bars really seem to vibrate a lot more than I care to. So anyway, we'll sand it from 60 to 180 on the inside, because of course we're going to do an epoxy coat on the inside and the outside of this. I've put the cone on my live center just to give this some support, and I'm using the Badger Cub straight tool here up near that cone. It's kind of really hard to get the Hercules in there. Just the tool geometry of it makes it pretty hard to get in there. See, it's really tight. So that's why it's good to have a tool like that where you can get in close to those really tight rotating surfaces near the jaws and up there on the cone. I actually really like having that tool around. You got to be careful with it, because if you go into something with the cutter being straight up and down, and I'm talking about the Badger Cub straight tool, you get yourself in some trouble. But if you start it on its side and turn it up, you'll have no issues at all. By the way, once this is cleaned up on the outside, there was some movement. Again, this was, overnight. And typically you're going to get some movement out of the wood. And the epoxy is still curing at this stage, so you might get a little bit of movement there too. And same on the outside as the inside, we're going to use the 3.5-inch stipple discs and sand from 60 to 180. I do not see the point in going any higher than that if you're going to be doing an epoxy coat. So, you're probably wasting your time if you go any higher than that, really. One spot there that I didn't trim properly. A couple seconds with the sandpaper, and it's good. 3 ounces of the Pro Series. All right, we'll see you in 10 minutes. Usually I use a silicone barbecue brush to apply this epoxy, but this time around I just decided to use my gloved hand. I usually use my gloved hand after the barbecue brush, so hey, seemed to work perfectly fine. Well, ain't she a beauty? Who would have thought that that old piece of wood would look as nice as it does? The crystal ice white is very dominant in the spruce cones, as I figured it would. As it settles down, it's going to land on the petals and stay there. I mean, just a really crazy looking, beautiful piece of wood. Lots of crystal ice white there. Give us a better light here. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, really like the cones up in this area. I know it's so shiny that it's hard to show, but yeah. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think. Here you can see some of it right there. That looks nice. Classic hollow form shape. Love it. Good morning. This is what it looks like the next day. Yeah, some dry spots here, not too many. No bubbles. Not one to be seen anywhere, which is kind of surprising. But this stuff will always keep you guessing. It's one of the reasons why I like working with it. Anyway, we're going to start sanding this with the 3.5-inch stipple discs, starting at 180, and we'll go all the way to 800. Get our sealer coat on. There were a couple of sags that needed to be sanded away. I don't leave this on the lathe while it's curing. I don't see the point. I'm going to be sanding this off. If I was doing an epoxy coat for a finish, well, that's a different story. But, I typically just take it off the lathe and put it in the clean room. That way it will cure in the heat. But I sanded it initially to 180, and I noticed there was a spot there that needed to be fixed. So we're going to use the Flash Bond, and these are 4-ounce bottles from Designer Epoxy. And if you want to get some of this, then please use code InlayGymCA, and that will help with the channel, and I greatly appreciate it. Now, one thing about CA glue, if you're not familiar with it, when it cures, it is actually quite hard. So it is important to spot sand it back to the surface of the wood, and then when that's done, you can turn the lathe on and blend it all in. And of course, I did sand this to 800 like I usually do. And then when that was done, we're going to use some Triple E buffing compound. And that is Triple E as in the city of Triple E, not 3 E's. And that should give us about 1,000, 1,200 surface, and clean it with a denatured alcohol. This is the Universal Tung Oil Sealer from Waterlux. This is specifically made to be used underneath of Waterlux finishes. You could probably try another sealer if you wanted to go down this path, but I always like to stick with the manufacturer of the finish if you're going to use some sort of a sealer like this. I think that it's just a good practice. Please keep in mind that all finishes are not compatible. So If you're using a product like Waterlux, you should be using the sealer from Waterlux and not a sealer from somebody else. There it is in its sealer coat. Very cool cones. It's nice and flat. That's the only thing with the epoxy. When you put it on here, it's usually pretty, it's not laid out flat like these finishes are. Man, this thing's awesome. I really like it. Hopefully you guys do as well. What do you think about the cones? Should I have left them out? My wife was saying that she thinks that I should have left them out. I don't think so. I think it adds to it. Anyway, let me know in the comments. So now I'm going to wipe this all off, and then it'll go in my clean room overnight, and then we'll put our first coat of original on tomorrow. I thought I would show this to you. This is what it looks like after it's been wiped off. Again, you know, this sealer is technically not a finish, and it says not to use it as a finish, but I thought that I would show this to you. Yeah, it's a little, you know, you could call it almost semi-gloss, but I think that it's going to lose some of that luster, but I'll show you again tomorrow after this all cures up. See you then. So here's the surface the next day. This is actually 2 days later, because what I did was I did a second pour down inside. So I'm hoping that it's only going to take one coat of the original here. Well, you can tell that it's definitely duller now that it has how the sealer is cured. Anyway, I'm going to buff this with a Triple E buffing compound. And clean it with the denatured alcohol and get our first coat of original. Yes, this is the same process. We're going to buff it with the Triple E. The only thing that's a little different this time around is I'm going to use some 6.0 steel wool so that I can clean the opening. We'll give the opening a tooth for the finish to stick to. This is very important. And then of course that denatured alcohol, so important so you don't have adhesion issues. If you're wondering what I'm using, here's the can. I buy it directly from Waterlux. That is the cheapest place to get it. Still getting messages on what kind of a rag am I using to apply these finishes, and lint-free cotton rags work the best. Old t-shirt material will work fantastic as well. Well, there it is in its first coat of original. I'll say it looks pretty nice. Anyway, hopefully that will do it. If not, well, I'll have to put another coat on tomorrow and we won't have a finished foot. Anyway, let me know what you think. I think this is one of the nicest ones I've done in a while, actually. Just that top pattern there is really cool. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow for either the foot or this. This was actually very frustrating to put onto the vacuum chuck here. I took a lot of time to do this. I cut the vast majority of the footage out. Well, pretty much all of the footage. It took me forever to get on there. I don't know why it just didn't want to cooperate, and it's still not on there perfect, but it was, you know, probably as good as I was going to get. But anyway, it still needs another coat of finish done on it, but at least we can get the bottom done. So I'd like to personally thank you all for stopping in and watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Special shout out to the members. You guys are awesome. And if you want to be a member of my channel, it's $2.99 a month to do so. Let's have a last little chat about this beautiful hollow form. Well, what do you think about this? Again, it's so super shiny, it's really hard to film. The rotating footage at the end should be pretty cool with this lit up. Yeah, just a lot of shine. Yeah, this piece of lilac is really cool. Thanks again, Warren, for sending that. Here is the bottom. I engraved it because you'd never be able to see it unless I didn't engrave it. And of course that's going to need another coat of finish, and it's going to need another coat of finish all over the piece as well. The size on this is 8 1/4 at its widest dimension, 6 3/4 tall, and it's a little thinner at the top than it is at the base. I don't know, like 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch through at the piece. Anyway, let me know what you think about this beautiful hollow form, classic hollow form shape. I really do like this shape. It really shows off a lot of stuff nicely. And this piece is for sale. If you're interested, send me an email to spraguewoodturning@gmail.com and I will disclose the price then, in case this is a gift. Anyway, let me know. Don't forget to put designer epoxy in the comments down below to be entered into the 3-gallon giveaway at 145,000 subscribers when we get there. Yeah, it's been really slow, but we will get there sooner or later. And of course, that's only for continental USA and Canada. Sorry, the rest of the world, we can't accommodate you at this time. And of course, don't forget about their summer sale. Designer Epoxy has a fantastic summer sale on right now, and you can still use my code. So if you've been waiting to try epoxy, now's your time. Next week, you know, I'm not exactly sure what I think it's going to be an enclosed bowl of some sort. I know there's a lot of people who want to see me get back to doing bowls. Don't worry, I'm not going to do another hollow form. I know there's probably like, oh, another hollow form. No, next week will probably be an enclosed bowl, but you know, you never know. You get it on the lathe, you never know what it's going to be. But we're going to be working with some magnolia pods as the power went out and then back on. So that will be next week. So please come on back for that. That was weird. Anyway, stay safe out there, whatever's happening. We'll see you next week.